So I mentioned a couple of times we have a new development in the labor movement that is pretty exciting. So the first ever Apple store has now unionized. This is in a suburb outside of Baltimore, Maryland. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. This is from More Perfect Union. They say, breaking in a historic victory, Apple Store employees in Maryland win the first union at Apple despite a nationwide anti-union campaign by Apple management. Workers voted overwhelmingly, 65-33, to unionize with, I think this is the Twitter handle here is @Machines TS Union. Machinists, I think, is,
right.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, I think it's like United Machinists of America, something like that. Okay, so Apple workers outside of Baltimore unionizing. Very exciting. It's interesting in the video that More Perfect Union talks about here. They interview the workers, and some of them said, you know, I've worked here for a long time. Before the pandemic, we had a horrific situation. You guys remember when Apple was caught basically degrading their old phone batteries so that people would be forced into new phones? Who's taking the brunt of the abuse from customers who are pissed off, rightfully, about what's going on? These Apple Store workers. Pre-pandemic, I'm sure if you guys have ever been in these, they're totally packed. I always find a very stressful environment. So they're in there day in, day out and felt like they had no say in the conditions of their workplace and just having to like take this abuse from customers and like no way to really deal with it. Then of course the pandemic presents a whole other level of challenge. And they talked too about how they were really inspired by, they saw what happened with Amazon, they saw what happened with the Starbucks workers, and that sparked the idea of, hey, if they could do it, we can do it too. So that was interesting. I mean, of course, the thing I'm very worried about, though, is there's a lot of factors for why right now you see all this grassroots labor movement organizing, workers saying, hey, we're not going to quit our job. We're going to stay here and organize. I think the biggest factor underpinning that is, number one, you have some natural leaders who have kind of galvanized the movement. But number two, you have, for the first time in a long time, the amount of productivity gains actually going to workers going up. And so you had workers in an actually comparatively strong position because there are lots of jobs out there. There just aren't a lot of good jobs. So that gave them a lot of leverage. It's not easy right now to hire replacement workers as it has been for most of my life, where people could just be treated as disposable. If we end up in a recession and the Fed is outright saying we want to cool off the labor market and depress wages, well, that's going to really make it a lot more difficult and take a lot of that leverage out of this burgeoning movement. So Bloomberg had an article about this. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen here. They say Fed's inflation battle to strip workers of rare bargaining power. Tight pandemic labor markets made employers offer better deals, but cure for soaring prices may mean higher unemployment too. And again, this is not speculative. This is, outright what they are saying and what they are telling you. So the fact that we've had a little bit more power flow to workers, that could all very easily be reversed, because ultimately, when you're just desperate to have a job, any job, it's a lot harder to take that risk of unionizing. We've seen how companies have been shameless about firing workers who get involved in these efforts.
I think that the Great Recession is a good reminder of this. When unemployment was like 10%, that was actually one of the periods where unionization and pushback against both union rights and worker power was at its highest level. And it was capitalized on, obviously, by a lot of the anti-union movement. And it was specifically because they had the ability in order to mass replace workers. Now, look, unemployment is only 3.6%. And of course, every business that you go to has a help wanted sign. But as you begin to see contraction, and if you start to see firings, or worse, not new hirings, putting back on hours, people closing their stores and not posting new listings, that's when we're going to see major issues. And it almost always starts at the lowest end of the income spectrum, which is where we've seen some of the highest growth. So you could see a real yo-yo effect of 2019, not a lot of power. There was a tightening labor market, certainly, but then 2020, 2021, that didn't have a particular amount of impact. And then when unemployment really begins to rise, that is when power goes away, and it goes away very quickly. I don't think we should really underestimate how fast the Federal Reserve and some of this monetary policy can trigger a recession. It can happen within 6 to 8 months. I mean, by some measures, we're already in recession. Personally, I don't even like these economic metrics like bear market at 20%.
It's very arbitrary.
Yeah, it is arbitrary. To me, it's about people. Ask people how people are the economy. We are the ones who conduct commerce. When people tell you the lowest consumer sentiment on record, that's a recession, in my opinion, because it's not even just about their spending, it's about expectations. Expectations are one of the biggest parts to manage inflation. And you can see you have the Treasury Secretary saying it's not going to come down anytime soon. Biden, I mean, there's no plan, as I can see right now, to do anything about it, which is going to drive people to be even more pessimistic, which means that they're going to pursue or consume less gas, maybe buy less stuff, not invest in new things, not buy a new house because of the mortgage rate. That's where everything starts to bleed into. I mean, we put that one tweet up there last week where someone was like, I have a 1.75% mortgage. Like, I'm not moving. And whenever mortgage is 6%, I'm just not going to sell my house. Well, that is a lot of people right now. Same with cars. I mean, I don't know if anybody's seeing the used car market recently. It's out of control. I mean, you know, like a basic SUV is going for like $45,000, $50,000. It's complete insanity. So it's very tough for people right now.
It is. And what we have seen routinely is, you know, with the people at the top, it's like, heads they win, tails you lose. When, of course, the market crashes and assets collapse and, you know, housing is a lot cheaper, like for them to take on the higher interest mortgage, well, they don't even have to because they have enough sufficient capital to just be able to buy up distressed assets so that when things rebound, they get richer and richer than ever before. So, you know, I mean, on the other side of, in terms of if the labor surge will continue, which I think has been really exciting and, you know, is a representation of actual true democracy and giving people a sense of autonomy and power within their day-to-day lives. Some of, I think, that has come not just from the changes in the labor market and the very low unemployment rate, but I think it also has come from a genuine shift in how people are thinking and relating to their work after the pandemic. I think part of it has come from a young generation that was inspired by the Bernie Sanders movement and, you know, the focus on the working class and on the labor movement that was sort of like a re-education for a generation that is kind of, because labor unions have been crushed almost out of existence, has been kind of disconnected from labor. So I do think that there are other factors at play that aren't just related to like the baseline metrics of the economy. There's just no doubt about it that this landscape will make things a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.